Rise of Hawk, Part 3, Scene 9, 18th of Arakan 3004. The next morning, Aram City. Nathan! Turning from a dingy hallway into the sunlit sleeping room, Nama called out again. Nay, come on, wake up. He bent over Nathan's cot and shook him by the arms. The young man flinched and, grabbing the base of Nama's thumbs, dislodged his grip with surprisingly strong fingers. Vivid blue eyes opened, and Nathan blinked at him. What's wrong? You slept in, numbnuts. Nama grinned. Come on, we've got a mountain of mammon to sort before today's festivities begin. Right. Nathan let go of his thumbs and got out of bed. Any breakfast today? Nama turned towards the door as Nathan put his sneakers on. Nah, kids got first dibs. Wasn't much left. Dana's team should arrive with more before we head out, though. Come on. They made their way through a maze of dark corridors to the central common room. It was dry and warm from the fire that roared in one corner. In the middle of the space, one group of people were crowded around an old pool table discussing some strategy involving maps and papers that littered the faded green surface. Carla and Nalana sat on blankets near the fire, giving the 10 or so rebel children of their cell lessons in reading and writing. On the far side of the room, furthest from the fire, Asha stood in the middle of another group, giving out orders. Nathan, she called from across the room, can you drive stick? Yes, ma'am, I can. Good, you're our new driver. Go get up. Nama walked towards Asha as Nay turned away. He waited for the young man to be out of earshot before giving Asha a tense look. What happened to Marcus and to keeping an eye on Nathan? I need Marcus in the first car, so you and Tay can still do the rounds in the van, she snapped. But if you know someone who can drive stick and doesn't already have a job, point them out to me. Nama lifted an eyebrow at her. What's got your knickers in a twist? What? Her deep blue eyes were angry for a moment before she sighed and shook her head. Oh, sorry. Big day. Tomorrow will be bigger, he gave her a wink. What's left to do? She brushed at an errant thread of curly black hair across her face and looked thoughtful for a moment. Only waiting on Dana. We really need to eat before we go. Okay. He turned away in the direction of the old kitchen and basement access. I'll get Tay and Bana. Thanks. And keep an eye on Bana until he's in the van. He's not trustworthy until he's done his part. Yes, ma'am, he called over his shoulder. Scene 10. But Mother, he'll kill you. Much of one side of Gwen's face had come out nearly black overnight, and it hurt Trian to see such damage on her daughter. No, my dear. Trian shook her head as she glanced at the large flat screen hanging nearby on her sitting room wall. Adverts flickered over the screen, and she looked back into her daughter's ocean blue eyes. Suspicion of treason is not justifiable grounds for execution. I am on the Azure Council and only 2 ranks below him. He cannot touch me without proof. He will suspect you. Gwen's eyes pleaded with her to see reason. Please, come with us. No. She shook her head. I'm staying here. Yes, he will suspect me, but if he could kill everyone whom he suspects of treason, there would only be he and Hoyle on the council, and the rest of Arana would be empty. Trust me, daughter, I've been dealing with him for over 20 years. I know what I'm doing. He can't hurt me. She glanced back up at the muted screen to see Terrace's face, mouthing words. Sound, she ordered. The TV unmuted itself. And I will offer an exclusive interview about the agency to any news station that comes to pick me up at midday from the top of the Aram Agency Tower building. Staring at the TV, Gwen covered her mouth in shock. Holy, found a messenger of divinity. Mute, commanded Trian. That's the signal, Gwen. We're just waiting for 2 more people to arrive and we go. Her daughter was distressed and didn't seem to hear her. What is Terrace doing? He's going to get himself killed. She rested a comforting hand on her daughter's arm, making sure her voice was gentle and loving to counter Gwen's fear. Yes, that may well happen, but he's doing it to get you out. So let's not make that sacrifice in vain. Her bird call doorbell sounded from the ceiling and she turned. Go and get Cassandra and Gusa. Trian waited for Gwen to step out of sight before swiping her system panel to open the door. She looked down into 2 ice-blue eyes framed by short white blonde hair. Trian's heart lifted into her throat. Orion Cody, she thought fearfully. Sharon's only daughter. The woman held her little boy, Beau, and both of them were dressed for cold weather in expensive wool-lined blue suede jackets and hoods. The young woman respectfully bowed her head. Good day, Matrona. I'm here for the day trip to a museum of natural history. She lifted a yellow sticky note from out of her cream faux fur jacket sleeve for a moment, and slipped it back under cover again. Trian swallowed the fear in her throat and stepped out of the doorway. She closed the door and turned to look at the woman, who was only a year younger than Gwyn. I must say I'm a little surprised to see you here. The well-practiced ice dropped away and a flare of mischief lifted into the young woman's face. It was the sort of mischief that Tree hadn't seen since Orion's mother died. Don't take offence, Matrona, but that's a good sign. If you wouldn't suspect me, my father wouldn't either. Trian nodded slowly. It's good to know that some of your mother lives on in you. Perhaps there's hope for your siblings. Orion grimaced. That's very doubtful. Junior and Morna are vicious like father. Cranaan is steadily catching up, and Tobid. She seemed sad for a moment, letting her words fade into silence. Tree gave the woman a sympathetic smile and nodded. Yes, dear, I know. I mourn his corruption as well. Mother? Gwen called out uncertainly from the next room. Come out, it's time for you to go now. Who's coming with? Gwen stepped through the doorway and halted, stock still when she saw Orion. Both little girls sensed Gwen's terror and gripped her legs tightly. Trian put her hand up to stall her daughter's fear. It's okay. Orion is coming with you. You're not coming, Matrona? She shook her head, looking back at the young woman. No, Orion. Someone has to stay and oppose your father on the council. Without my vote, he'd be unstoppable. May I have your sticky note, please? The note was handed over, and Trian went into the kitchen sink to set it on fire. When it was fully aflame, she dumped it into the metal basin and faced the 2 women again. I will take you to the checkpoint on level 8. From there, you'll have to go alone down to the bus bay. Gwen has your official papers, but still be careful inside the building. Tira said that once you're out on the streets, they will find you and get you to safety. By the time she finished speaking, the note had all but turned to ash in the sink. She ran the faucet for a few moments to wash the remains down the drain and stepped back into her parlour. Come, it's time. Trian lifted young Gusa into her arms. She led the others out of her apartment and down the hall to the elevator. The main doors opened to greet them with an astringent chemical smell of carpet cleaner. She stepped inside the elevator and pressed the button. The doors opened and she stepped out, leading the group in a zigzag pattern through the halls. Tree neared the security station, and as if on an unsaid cue, all 3 of them, well trained in the arts of deception, manipulation, and as was required by their jobs, animated into a group of excited women. Turning to the main security hall, she led the others towards an intersection. It was filled with armed guards, a single barred door, and a very bored-looking security man who sat in front of a flickering computer screen. What are you going to see first? She said excitedly to her daughter. Gwen laughed. The first thing I'm going to do is find a cafe and have a proper espresso coffee. Oh yes, real coffee and some chocolate cake. Orion joined in with an empathically genuine flare of warmth. Trian put her hand on her daughter's shoulder, giving her a gentle smile. I wish I could come with you, but there's just so much work to be done in the lab. We also have another council meeting at 3. She rolled her eyes. The paperwork has been unending for weeks on this new initiative of Jaren's. Do bring some cake back for me, if you can manage it. Of course, Mother. Turning to face the security guard, Gwen took out their papers from her jacket pocket and handed them over to the man behind the desk. A day trip to the museum. His voice dripped with sarcasm. Aren't we the lucky ladies? Trian sensed the tension in the 2 young women, but she didn't bat an eyelid at the man's obvious disrespect. It's not for them, but the children. They're doing an art history module in their Year 1 class, and I suggested that their learning would be augmented appropriately, if they could experience it firsthand. Is there a problem? Where's your second countersign? Barked the man, still with an undertone of disrespect in his voice. She hadn't been able to get a second signature in time, but it shouldn't stop them. She lifted her voice into an imperious tone and looked down her nose at the guard. Excuse me, young man, but do you know who I am? Surely a council member and head of Psi Research doesn't require a supervisor's countersign, considering there are only 2 others of higher rank than me in this entire building. The procedure is rather moot, don't you think? Procedure is The radio strapped to his bulletproof vest blared incomprehensibly. The man lifted the radio to speak into it. This is Hub 8, please repeat to Ra2. What replied over the radio the second time sounded just as incomprehensible to Treon as the first lot of noise, but the guard seemed to understand the static, distorted voice. Copy Ra2, this is Hub 8, sending extra troops now. He did the papers back to Gwen and waved them through the checkpoint. Treon put Gussa down and wrapped her arms quickly around her daughter's shoulders. You have a good time, dear daughter. I love you. Love you too, Mum. Scene 11. Jonah, the guard who worked full-time in the Level 10 security room of the agency tower, liked being a nobody. People who are invisible in the agency, thought Jonah, don't get shot by moody superiors, and they... Where is he, you incompetent preta? The nearby screen and the back of Jonah's neck were peppered with little drops of spittle from the screaming man looming over the back of his chair. I don't know. How can I? Jonah scanned the ocean of screens in the security hub room. Sir, there are over 1,000 cameras. Sharon Cody Jr. smacked the control panel with the palm of his hand. I don't want to hear excuses. What I want is a competent worker. Where is your supervisor? Jonah swallowed. I think he's on a lunch break, sir. I paged him. He should be here soon. The superior pointed to a screen in the middle of the wall. A dark-haired man stood on camera in the hallway. A smile lifted into the man's oval face, and he waved at them. Where is that? Jonah felt it prudent not to point out the labels below each screen. He simply answered the question. Level 15, sir. North side of the research labs. Where's your radio? Send troops to that location, now. He glanced sideways at the A0 agent and lifted the microphone to his lips. This is Ra2. We need all available troops to level 15. Over. The radio buzzed with numerous copy signals from security teams all over the building. This is Hub 8. Please repeat, Ra2. Came a muffled response over the radio. Above them, the man on camera stepped out of sight again. Keeping his eyes on the screens above him, Jonah lifted the radio again. Copy Hub 8. This is Ra2. All available troops to level 15. Over. Copy Ra2. This is Hub 8. Sending extra troops now. Jonah's eyes flickered tensely over the screens. The longer this trader was out of shot, the further he could get from the incoming security teams. His older superior stepped back from him, still pulsing with rage and indignation, but currently focused more on the screens than unfairly abusing him for incompetence. Where is he? Where is he? If Tyrus escapes... A face flickered over a screen long enough to catch Jonah's eye before moving off again. There, he pointed. That's level 20. He must have found an elevator or stairwell without a camera. Blue eyes glared at him. How many of them are there? Jonah tried not to tremble. This man was the son of the head. He could probably kill him for no justifiable reason and get away with it. He swallowed, thinking hard. Accessible stairwells? Maybe 2 or 3, but there's only one without cameras covering the doors. There's only one elevator without a camera, and that's on the north side of the tower, but it's supposed to be closed for maintenance. Again, the dark-haired man flickered into camera view, with a wave and a smile for them. This time it was level 26. The older man swore. That Sothan Akinan is trying to play with us. Shut down all elevator use from above level 10. Shut the whole Sothan building down if you have to. Send teams up the stairwells from level 20, and for founder's sakes, send a few to the roof as well. Jonah glanced sideways at the man, confused. Sir? Just do it. I want that man in the morgue or with the interrogators within the hour. Scene break. Terrace tapped his foot on the carpeted floor of the elevator. He had one arm resting on the metal rail that lined the walls, and his other hand was slipped into the side pocket of his pants, his fingers touching the handle of his secondary weapon. The elevator was taking forever to get to the top level. He didn't want to be killed in a crowded little elevator by security just because the thing was so slow. The elevator was really used because it was on the wrong side of the building and far too small for most purposes. But it was the only elevator without a camera, and it wouldn't take long for Jaron Cody Jr. to realize that he wasn't about to climb 30 stories of stairs. His impatience became acute to the point of torture. He couldn't stay in one place. He had to keep moving. He smacked the button of a level above him so he could get out sooner. It was a good 5 levels below where he wanted to be, but there were a number of other options he could take that were less like a potential ambush than the little surface elevator. The doors opened to reveal a narrow hallway and a security guard standing directly in front of him. Instinct kicked in. He stepped into the man's personal space, took his weapon, and, gripping the man's throat, gained entry to his lightly shielded mind to trigger a telepathic sleep program. When the man was unconscious, Terrace pulled his body to the side and, opening the nearest door, dumped him out of sight in a cupboard. So they were on to him. There were 5 levels to cover and cameras everywhere. It was likely that Junior had already ordered teams to the roof to head him off. He'd probably also figured out by now that Terrace knew where all the cameras were, so he would be expecting him to be in the camera back areas. This was going to be difficult, but it was all or nothing now. He could not be captured and taken to the interrogators. The ordered footfalls of TFO combat boots came towards him from up the hall. He ducked into a door on his left. The chemical smell met his nostrils, and he knew, even in the darkness, that he must be in some kind of lab. Reaching out his hands in the pitch blackness, he searched for something to guide him. His fingers brushed the line of a high table. Using touch alone, he followed the length of the wood to a wall on the other side of the room. He knew there wouldn't be a door to his left because that was the north wall of the building, so, shuffling quietly in the dark, he followed the wall to his right. Edges and blurred lines hovered in the darkness around him, and he wished that he'd risked turning on the lights. With one hand on the wall, the other stretched out in front of him, he slid his foot another careful step forwards. His fingertips met a second wall perpendicular to the first. An insert in the surface revealed another door. His fingers found the handle and pushed down as he heard someone knock on the entry behind him in the dark. Light met him on the other side, but his fingers groped to turn the lock. He spun around, and at the click of metal on metal, he realized he was trapped. The room was a little adjoining storage area. It was shelving on 3 walls, which were cluttered with glass bottles and jars. Next to the door, the 4th wall, was a single clear table. There was no exit. He sighed. Voices sounded from outside, and the handle moved as someone tried to open the door. He stepped away from it in case the person on the other side was touch sensitive, and they could feel him through the wood and metal. More voices sounded, and he knew it wouldn't be long before they broke through. It was freedom or death for him, because he knew who Hawk was, and that information could not reach Jaran. He glanced around the room, either for possible escape or a possibly quick death. Something above the door caught his attention. A yellow sticky note protruded out of a fairly large air vent in the ceiling. Terrace leaped onto the bench and pulled the sticky out. "Go up," it said. Of course, he thought. They wouldn't think to check the air vents. We'd have to buy Hawk a drink once he got out. Man certainly thought of everything.